They laughed when I picked up the rifle. Not loud, the kind of laugh men use when they believe they're being polite. Boots scuffed concrete. Brass winked along the firing line. Someone muttered, "Sweetheart, let the men handle it." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I settled the stock into my shoulder and breathed past the urge to prove anything. The sight ringed a paper heart at 50 yards. Wind steady quartering left. Cheek weld. Pulse. Slow press. Crack. Then another. 8 more. Followed the same groove of breath and bone. When the echo died behind the berm, you could have heard the air filter hum. 10 shots weren't 10 holes at all, just one ragged coin in the center. Every smirk on that line went missing. You want the rest? My name is Sarah Whitmore. I don't raise my voice. Dignity is quiet. The men who taught me that tied their boots in the dark and went where other people prayed no one would have to go. I learned to listen. And when I had to speak, I did it with my hands. That morning at the public range, I could have told the gray-bearded instructor about the wet sand of Coronado and the evolutions that take your breath, your sleep, and then your pride grinding until only the truth remains. But this wasn't about the men in front of me. It was about the standard behind them. The rangemaster blew a whistle and walked the line looking for luck. "Ma'am," he said carefully, because the word tasted new in his mouth. "Mind telling me what you did different?" Nothing I said, followed instructions. The young buck beside me, forearms like braided rope, lifted his cap. "You in law enforcement or something." Something I said. "Respect like revenge isn't fire. It's a thermostat. Set it where it needs to be, leave it there." You wanted a story. Here's where we pull back. Before that day, I'd been on a contract near Yuma, where the desert turns heat into a living thing. Old airfield, mostly government types, and private ones who pretend they're not. I was there to evaluate a training evolution rifle refreshers, stress shoots, some close quarters reps. Nothing fancy. The civilian liaison liked the sound of his own laugh. He called the shooters my boys, though half were older than him. First time we met, he gestured me aside. "Keep it moving, sweetheart," he said as if I were blocking his son. When a man says sweetheart like that, he's not flirting. He's checking your leash. I checked his schedule instead. "We're burning daylight," I said. "Roger," that he said and didn't move. Day 1 ran hot and sloppy. Mag changes late. Breathing wrong. Everyone had an excuse. No one had a reason. After a young shooter with shaky hands asked for a tip. "Slow is smooth," I said. "Smooth is fast." He repeated it like a prayer. On day 2, the liaison passed out score sheets. "Compete for bragging rights," he told them. Bragging is sand in an engine. It grinds until the machine quits. I took my spot at the back and watched. You feel tension grow the way you feel a storm before it crosses the fence. Hair lifts, air thins. Dignity, justice, inner strength, nice words. In practice, they look like the decision to keep your mouth shut when someone deserves the last word they might ever hear. Mid-morning, the liaison reached past a shooter to tap his trigger to show travel. The muzzle swung and time slowed. It's not the big sins that get you. It's the small, careless ones that believe no one is watching. "Hey," I said, calm enough to set a glass on. "Hands off the trigger housing." He looked at me like I'd interrupted a sermon. The shooter kid from Oklahoma by his belt buckle was breathing too fast. "Fear smells like copper and cheap coffee." "Tell you what the liaison said loud enough for the line. Why don't you show us how it's done, sweetheart?" Some men laughed, others didn't. The ones who didn't had been close enough to stupid to feel its heat. I stepped up, not to prove anything to him, but so the kid could see what calm looks like when it's time to be loud without raising your voice. I picked up the rifle. Memory is muscle. My hands did what they'd done 1,000 times when no one was clapping. Magazine seated, tap rack, sight picture alignment, breath, pause, press, reset. Again. Noise fell away until there was only the target and the thread between us. 10 rounds later, the center was gone. No one applauded. Good. Applause evaporates. Respect sticks. The liaison tried a joke. "Guess you've shot before, but the air took it." His throne of folding chairs wobbled. Consequence doesn't announce itself. It arrives and the room gets quiet. I cleared the weapon and flagged the chamber. The rangemaster checked, nodded, and didn't ask who I was. I walked down range with a stapler to hang a fresh target. On the way back, the Oklahoma kid met my eyes. "Thank you, ma'am," he said. "Don't thank me," I said. "Do it right for the man next to you." He nodded like he'd been handed a burden and a gift wrapped in the same paper. You're wondering if that ended it? No, men like our liaison don't learn from a hole in paper. They learn when the paper becomes a mirror. We weren't there yet, but we would be. That evening, I wrote up my notes: safety violation trigger intrusion muzzle sweep. Nothing dramatic on paper, just facts times distances. Paper is where discipline lives when memory tries to bend. I sent the report to the program lead and slept light. Before dawn, the wind shifted. You could taste grit in your teeth, that mineral bite the desert saves for people who stay too long. Day 3 would bring the stress course: movement, cover, reloads, malfunctions, where mistakes don't wait their turn. The liaison had volunteered to pace the line. I'd asked him not to. He smiled like rules were a rumor. So I laid out fresh targets, checked the med kit, and said a quiet prayer I learned in a place that doesn't advertise. Not for me, for the men who didn't know yet what they were about to learn. Day 3 began with the kind of light that makes the desert look honest. No shadows yet, just raw sun rolling across the range. Dust hung low, turning boots and rifles the same shade of sand. Men stretched shoulders, checked optics, tugged gloves. The Oklahoma kid, his name was Miller, kept tapping his mag like it was a worry stone. The liaison strutted up with mirrored shades and that grin men wear when they think they own the room. "Today we find out who's got ice in their veins," he said. He held a clipboard like it was a weapon. My notes from the night before had made their way to his boss, and I could feel the weight in his stare. That's fine. Let him stare. Paper holds longer than pride. The course was simple on paper. 50 yards uprange, drop behind cover, engage 4 silhouettes, reload under pressure. Finish with a sprint and double tap. In practice, it's sweat noise and the way your hands stop listening when your heart forgets how to count. Mistakes reveal themselves fast. I'd seen men with chests full of ribbons crumble under less. Miller drew first lane. He looked my way before the whistle. I nodded once. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. He breathed step forward, and for the first time since I'd met him, his rifle moved like it belonged in his hands. He wasn't perfect, but he was present. That matters more. The line rotated. Shots cracked. Brass danced. The desert answered with echoes. Then the liaison called out, "Clear the lane. I'll show you how it's really done." He brushed past Miller, brushing his shoulder harder than he needed to. Pride wears sharp elbows. I thought about stopping him. Instead, I watched. Sometimes men need their own rope. Whistle blew. He bolted uprange too fast, boots slipping on gravel. First shots went wide low. He cursed, reloaded sloppy, jammed the mag. Seconds bled like open wounds. He yanked the charging handle, forgot to tap forward, sent another round sideways. Target silhouettes stared back, untouched. The shooters on the sideline weren't laughing now. They watched like men at a poker table who realize the bluff is bare. Silence isn't always respect. Sometimes it's the sound of truth finally walking through the door. He gave up on the jam, tossed the rifle down hard enough to spit dust. Equipment failure. He barked, voice cracked at the edges. Nobody moved. Nobody believed. The desert doesn't forgive excuses. I stepped forward, lifted the same rifle from the dirt, ran a palm down the receiver, tapped, racked, pressed. Chamber clean, I loaded fresh checked sights and waited for the whistle. When it came, I moved not fast, not slow, just steady. 4 silhouettes blinked out one by one. Reload clean. Sprint. Double tap. End. The paperman in sunglasses was gone. Only targets, and then nothing but holes in the right places. When the dust settled, the only sound was brass cooling. I set the rifle down, cleared, flagged. Then I looked him in the eye, calm as water. Not the equipment, I said. Discipline. His jaw clenched. Behind him, Miller's mouth twitched like he was holding back words he didn't dare say. Dignity is contagious. So is cowardice. Today, the men knew the difference. After the program lead called me aside, he'd read my report. He'd seen what happened. We'll be making some changes, he said. His tone didn't invite questions. Consequence had found its place. I walked out past the line. The men parted, not with noise, not with applause, but with that quiet weight soldiers know when someone's proved they belong. Miller nodded again, tighter this time, like a bond sealed. Respect is currency. Spend it careful. The liaison didn't speak to me for the rest of the week. He didn't have to. He was already erased. Men remember who showed up when the line broke and who didn't. I thought about my father that night. He told me once, "A rifle doesn't care who holds it. Only the man next to you does." I used to believe he meant I'd never be enough. Now I know better. He meant the test is constant and the answer is action. That week wasn't about bragging rights. It was about dignity, for Miller, for the others, even for the ones who never said a word. They left knowing respect can be earned in silence, but once it's there, it speaks louder than any insult. And the man who mocked me with sweetheart, he learned what every smirk eventually learns, the desert always finds out. Day 4 carried a different kind of heat. Not just the sun, it was pride-wounded and restless, bouncing off the firing line like ricochets. You could feel it in the way men snapped magazines home too hard, the way they muttered under breath. Respect had shifted. The laughter was gone, but something heavier took its place. That morning, the schedule called for night drills prep. Low-light shooting equipment checks movement by red lens. Simple, but it exposes bad habits like nothing else. Under darkness, you either trust your training or you flinch at every shadow. The liaison didn't show for the briefing. No surprise. When men lose their audience, they tend to lose their courage too. The program lead ran the instructions instead, and his eyes never left me when he spoke. Every man here, he said, will know the difference between silence and fear by the end of tonight. He didn't need to say why. I checked my gear twice. Rifle sidearms spare mags, nods spare batteries. My hands moved without thought, the way years of muscle memory carved themselves into you. The others watched, noticed. Some tried to copy the rhythm. That's fine. Copy enough times and it becomes yours. As the sun dropped, desert cooled just enough to sting. Men lined up in pairs, rifles angled low. Miller drew beside me again. He didn't say much, just a nod the way men do when words would cheapen what they mean. We moved in silence until the first whistle cut through. Targets were half buried in darkness. Some men stumbled, rifles wagging. Others lost count on reloads. Brass clinked like bells, announcing mistakes. When my turn came, I let the darkness press in. Breath, sight through nods. Crack, shift, crack. The rhythm steadied me, not them. By the end, my lane was clean. Others, not so much. One shooter, a big man, with a voice like gravel, slammed his mag against his boot and cursed. "Can't see a damn thing," he spat. His shots went wide, scattering sand. I walked past him quiet. "Eyes before hands," I said. He grunted but tried again. This time, steadier. Men don't change in a night, but they remember who didn't mock them when they failed. Later, during a break, Miller asked, "Ma'am, why don't you ever snap back? You could shut them down with one sentence." I thought about it, watching the glow sticks flicker in the dirt. "Because words fade," I said. "Results don't." He nodded slow, like he was storing that away for a day when it would matter. The drills ran late. Fatigue gnawed. When the final whistle blew, rifles hung heavy on straps. Some men staggered, but the line was intact. Nobody quit. That's worth more than perfect shots. The lead dismissed us. Men drifted to bunks. Miller lingered, looking like he wanted to ask more, but didn't. Sometimes restraint is the answer. Back in my quarters, I stripped gear, laid it out for inspection. Every nick in the rifle told a story. My father's voice echoed, "Steel doesn't lie. Neither do results." I thought of him often during those nights. He never once said he was proud of me. Maybe he never would. But on ranges like this, with men learning through silence and sweat, I understood pride didn't always need words. The next morning, the liaison returned. Sunglasses grin, pretending nothing had happened. But the men didn't laugh at his jokes anymore. Their eyes slid past him to the rifle. The targets, the results. He was background noise now. And he knew it. That's the thing about dignity. Once earned, it doesn't shout. It just stands steady until everyone else feels the weight. And for the first time, he felt it too. Day 5 was built for breaking people. The stress course stretched half a mile across the desert scrub walls to climb trenches, to crawl targets tucked into shadows. Add heat, add weight, add the steady drum of exhaustion, and men start showing who they really are. We were up before dawn, gear clattering in the back of trucks. Miller sat beside me, jaw-tight helmet balanced on his knees. He didn't ask questions this time. He just breathed slow, steady, like he was trying to memorize how calm looks before the storm. At the start line, the program lead laid it out. This isn't about speed. It's about discipline under pressure. Miss your targets, you redo the section. Cut corners, you're done. His eyes swept the line. They stopped on me longer than they needed to. The liaison barked a laugh too loud for the hour. Guess we'll see if Sweetheart's luck holds up. A few heads turned, but nobody laughed with him. Respect had shifted, and he stood outside it. He didn't see that yet. First wave went out. Boots pounding sand, spraying rifles up. Targets popped, shots rang. Some men hit clean, others cursed and reset. Sweat carved lines down dust-caked faces. When my turn came, I adjusted my pack straps, felt the weight settle where it belonged. Whistle blew. I moved. Walls, trenches, crawl space, tight enough to scrape shoulders. Rifle stayed, high eyes stayed open. Targets fell one by one. No wasted motion, no wasted breath. Halfway through, I heard shouting behind me. The liaison. He'd cut into the course, skipping obstacles to get ahead. Pride makes men stupid. He fired wild rounds, chewing dirt nowhere near silhouettes. Then the jam came again. Same rifle, same mistake. He slammed it against a barricade, cursed like the word could fix steel. Men on the sidelines watched, eyes wide. He'd made himself the show, and the show was collapsing. I slowed just enough to see. The chamber was clearable. He didn't know how. Or maybe he did, and panic had chewed the knowledge right out of him. Either way, the weapon in his hands was dead weight. I passed him without a word, cleared my own lane, pushed through to the finish. My shirt stuck to my back, lungs burned, but my rifle was clean, my shots true. At the end line, silence waited. Men weren't cheering, they were measuring. The liaison stumbled in minutes later, red-faced weapon slung like a burden. No excuses this time. Just silence thick enough to choke on. The program lead stepped forward, clipboard under his arm. He didn't look at the scores. He looked at the men. You just learned something you can't put on paper, he said. His gaze slid past me, straight into the liaison. Respect is discipline, and discipline doesn't jam. No one laughed. No one needed to. Later, in the shade of a rusted canopy, Miller dropped beside me, helmet off face, streaked with dust. "Ma'am?" he said, voice rough. "I didn't think I'd make it through that trench. Then I remembered what you said. Results don't fade." So I kept crawling. I nodded. "You made it." He smiled, tired but real. "Yeah, guess I did." Men learn in different ways. Some learn through silence, some through sweat, and some through failure that cuts too deep to hide. That day, the range taught all three. And the man who mocked me with Sweetheart, he learned last. Always last. Day 6 began with wind. Not the soft kind that cools your skin, the desert kind that rips grit into your eyes and scours the paint off steel. It rattled the tin roofs over the ready benches, made the targets sway on their frames. Wind like that doesn't just test bullets, it tests patience. The schedule said long-range marksmanship, out past 300, out past 5. For some of these men, it was their first time past iron sight comfort zones. For me, It was memory, the calm math of distance, the quiet trust between eye breath and trigger. They laid the rifles out on benches. The liaison strutted again, acting like yesterday hadn't carved him hollow. "Today's where precision separates the men from the tourists," he said. "He didn't call me sweetheart this time. Progress, maybe, or just fear of silence." Miller drew the short straw to go first. He lined up on the 300 target. The wind caught his shot, carried it wide. He clenched his teeth, reset, missed again. The others shifted uncomfortably. I leaned down, voice steady. "Trust the flag. Read the drift before you fire. Wind isn't your enemy, it's just part of the math." He nodded, adjusted, squeezed. The next round slapped steel with a clang that cut through the gusts. His shoulders loosened. Respect for himself landed heavier than the shot. One by one, the others stepped up. Some fought the wind, some adapted. Targets rang more often than not. Each hit drew no cheers, just nods. Soldiers know silence weighs more than applause. Then the liaison took his turn. He sprawled across the bench like he was on parade. First shot went so wide the spotter didn't even call it. Second wasn't better. He muttered about crosswinds, about optics. Excuses ride lighter than bullets, they blow away quick. He adjusted hard, jerked the trigger. The round sailed high, missing by yards. I could see it in his jaw, the same panic that jammed him 2 days ago. Men think failure is the shot. Truth is failure is the excuse that follows. The program lead didn't say a word. He just wrote something down and stepped back. The silence around the liaison wasn't respect. It was absence. Nothing emptier than a man who used to draw laughter and now can't draw a glance. When my turn came, I didn't make a speech. I set the rifle in checked dope, watched the mirage dance in the scope. Breath, hold, press. Steel rang. 500, 7. Wind shoved. I adjusted, pressed again. Steel sang back every time. I didn't look up after each hit. Didn't need to. The men heard. More important, the liaison heard. When I finally cleared and flagged, Miller whispered low, almost to himself, "Navy SEAL." Not loud, not for applause, just a truth that fit the silence better than anything else could. That night in the mess tent, the liaison sat alone at the end of the table. His boys ate in clusters around him, their backs turned. He stared at his tray, touched nothing. Pride is loud when it's fed. Starve it and it crumbles. I didn't celebrate. I just finished my meal, stood and walked out. Some victories look like holes in paper. Some look like brass cooling in sand. This one looked like a man learning too late that silence can bury you deeper than any bullet ever could. Day 7 began before sunrise. The desert was still dark sky, washed in dull gray when the trucks rolled to the final course. No chatter this time. The men sat quiet, hands on rifles, waiting. Respect had settled into the air. Not for me alone, respect for what they'd endured, what they'd seen, what they'd become. The last evolution was a team drill breach, clear rescue. Not paper targets now. Moving silhouettes, timed doors, smoke. Stress high enough to break whatever pride the weak hadn't already stripped. The program lead gave instructions, flat, no drama. You will go in pairs. Communication and discipline only. Fail, and you run it again. His eyes scanned the line. He didn't need to name names. Everyone knew who he meant. When Miller's name came up, they paired him with me. His face tightened, but his nod was steady. I checked his kit, quick taps on mag straps, optics. He caught the rhythm. At the start line, smoke hissed from canisters. The world shrank to gray fog, heartbeat, and the weight of a rifle in your hands. Whistle. We moved. Breach charge popped. Door caved. I flowed left, Miller, right. Silhouettes jumped from shadow. Crack, crack, clear. Move. Reload. Clear. His voice carried calm, left clear. Mine answered, right clear. The rhythm of trust. We reached the final room. A hostage target in the corner. Hostile silhouettes circling. Miller hesitated. Barrel wavered. I touched his shoulder, steadied him. Slow is smooth, I said low. He breathed once, fired clean. Targets down. Hostage safe. Whistle blew. End. We stepped out into daylight. Men on the line nodded. Not the wild applause of civilians, not the forced cheer of competition. Just that quiet wait again, the only applause that matters in uniform. Then the liaison's name was called. He stepped up alone. No one volunteered to pair with him. Program lead didn't ask twice. Run it solo, he said. Smoke hissed. Whistle. The man went in loud firing before clearing corners. Shots, wild communication, none. At the final room, he froze. Hostage and hostile blurred in the fog. His magazine ran dry. No reload. Silence. The whistle cut him short. He stumbled out, face pale, chest heaving. No excuses this time. Only silence from men who knew the truth. Failure wasn't in the shots. It was in the man. The program lead closed his clipboard. Training ends here, he said. He didn't look at the liaison again. Erased. Miller stepped forward, dirt-streaked sweat cutting lines down his cheeks. Ma'am? He said, voice steady. You carried me through. I shook my head. No, you carried yourself. I just showed you how to walk. He smiled, then small but real. Pride of his own earned the only way it counts. As the men packed up the Oklahoma, Kid looked back at me once more. You're not just someone, are you? I let the silence answer. Sometimes names don't need to be spoken. But when he whispered Navy SEAL, it wasn't awe. It was recognition. That's enough. Men like the liaison fade into dust. Men like Miller carry the lesson forward. And me, I walk away the same as I came, in calm, steady knowing. Dignity doesn't shout, it just endures. Respect isn't given, it's earned. Shot by shot, step by step. In silence until the day no one dares laugh again. Day 8 wasn't on the schedule. The official training had ended. Trucks were packed, brass-swept targets hauled off. Men were ready to head back to families, jobs, routines. But the desert doesn't keep time by clipboards. It keeps it by memory, and memories linger. That morning, the program lead called everyone together under the ragged awning. His voice carried the weight of finality. You've learned discipline, silence, respect. Some of you found limits. Some of you broke past them. Either way, you'll remember this week. His eyes didn't drift toward me. They didn't need to. Everyone else's already had. The liaison stood off to the side, arms crossed, sunglasses, hiding eyes that couldn't meet anyone else's. He'd shown up, but he was already gone, his authority hollow, his voice ignored. Men who used to laugh at his jokes now stepped around him like a piece of junk left in the sand. Miller was different. His spine was straighter, his voice firmer. He shook hands with the others like he belonged, and they accepted him as one of their own. His growth was the real story. Mine was just the reminder. After dismissal, he walked over. Ma'am, he said, quiet enough no one else could hear. I used to think toughness was loud. You showed me it's not. It's steady, silent, real. I let the words hang before answering. Don't remember me. Remember the lesson. Respect isn't what they call you. It's what you carry so no one can take it away. He nodded, eyes clear. That's when I knew he'd keep it. The trucks rolled out. Dust plumes faded behind them. I stayed a while longer alone on the empty range, picked up a single casing from the sand, turned it between my fingers. Brass cool now, but it had once held fire, proof that even noise fades into silence, leaving only results. I thought of my father again, the man who never said he was proud, the man who told me once, a rifle doesn't care who pulls the trigger, only the man next to you does. I'd carried those words like a wound for years, but now I understood. He hadn't doubted me. He'd been warning me the fight is never about proving yourself. It's about who you protect when it matters. That week in the desert, a room full of smirks disappeared. Not because of one ragged hole in paper, but because the silence that followed taught them more than 1,000 lectures ever could. Dignity doesn't roar. Justice doesn't brag. Inner strength doesn't need applause. It just waits, calm, patient. And when the moment comes, it speaks louder than anything else on earth. So if you take one thing from my story, let it be this: Don't underestimate silence. Don't laugh too soon. And never mistake calm for weakness. Because sometimes the quietest one in the room is the Navy SEAL. If this story moved, you take a moment to reflect on the men and women who've worn the uniform often in silence, always with dignity. Share this with someone who needs to remember that strength isn't noise, it's steadiness. And if you'd like more stories that honor courage, respect, and justice, subscribe and stay with us.